Welcome to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. It's time to know more so you can say no more. It's time for the Clearly Christian Podcast. Here's your host, Dr. Cy Smith.
I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this is Clearly Christian, a podcast about what it means to see the world from God's perspective and the impact this has for training the next generation to live a life consistent with a biblical worldview. If you've been listening and you like what you hear, I hope you'll hit the subscribe button or leave a review. That'll let others know the show's worth checking out, help spread the word, and serve our mission to make a difference. So thank you again for being here, and thank you for helping us advance the cause of Christian education. Let me start with this today. In the spring of 2008, I became a school superintendent. By the fall of 2008, I became the CEO of a multi-million-dollar business. After 16 years as both a teacher and a principal, I was asked to be the superintendent at my alma mater, Mansfield Christian School. It took me only one summer to realize that I was trained to lead a school, but not to run an organization. Building debt and the recession had taken its toll on the local economy and our enrollment. Our school as a business was in trouble, and I, as the leader, it was my job to fix it. Unfortunately, many school leaders find themselves in a similar position at some point in their careers. That is, they're well-trained as educators or ministry leaders, but forced to learn the business side of things the hard way. I soon came to the realization that Christian schools are a hybrid organization, and all three pieces are essential for success. Christian schools are educational institutions that must deliver excellence that adds values for families every year. They're also ministries that must communicate the transformational impact they're making in the lives of students and parents. And finally, Christian schools are businesses that must generate a profit to create margin that will allow the mission to move forward. Well, just like a three-legged stool, each of these pieces are absolutely necessary, and excellence in one area cannot compensate for neglect in others. As I've worked with numerous schools around the country and provided leadership from my own school now for 35 years, I'm convinced that Christian schools don't fail because leaders don't care. They fail because they misunderstand what they're leading. This doesn't mean just knowing that our schools are educational institutions, ministries, and businesses. It means providing organizational leadership in all three areas that's targeted for advancement. It means being intentional and proactive in our strategic planning to see that our schools are truly becoming what God has called us to be. For this reason, I'm excited to talk with Dr. Jason Rachels today. He's the president of Calvary Christian Academy in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Dr. Rachels understands this hybrid reality clearly, as Calvary Christian Academy is the largest Christian school system in the country with over 3,500 students, 640 faculty and staff, and it stretches over 4 campuses in South Florida. But Dr. Rachels knows that bigger isn't necessarily better. Better is better. And he and his team work hard to address all three pieces of this hybrid reality within the organization. He's faithfully dedicated decades of service to Calvary Christian since its opening in 2000. Dr. Rachels is passionate about making disciples through Christian education, and he enjoys helping other leaders grow and take their leadership to the next level, so as to make a bigger impact for the kingdom of God by changing lives for him. Dr. Rachels is also the founder of Schools United, which seeks to help every Christian school leader, faculty, and staff member find or develop a peer network for their profession. The Schools United annual conference in Fort Lauderdale has grown to be the largest Christian educator conference in the world right now, with 4,700 attendees. And it's also launched multiple conferences in other states. So that is certainly exciting. So, Jason, great to have you here. Long overdue. Welcome to the Clearly Christian Podcast.
No, it's great. Great to be here with you, Cy, and I appreciate you having me.
Oh, super. Well, let's go ahead and jump in because there's a lot of topics here I want to talk about related to Calvary and, of course, Christian education, but all the things that we're doing as head of schools. But I want to talk about those three critical features of Christian schools that I mentioned in the intro and the expectations for leaders if we're going to thrive in this cultural moment. But let's go ahead and start with your own journey in education. How'd you arrive at your role now and what you're doing there at Calvary, and why is it you do what you do right now?
Yeah, no, good question. After graduating from college, I did a little bit of work as a youth pastor, but then felt like I wanted something that was more structured like education, versus what all the wildness of youth ministry was, though it was a lot of fun. So then I became a Bible teacher and did that for 5 years with a little bit of teaching Greek and Latin on the side. And then my home church was looking to start a school, and they asked if I'd be a part of a idea committee that was exploring that. And through that, I became the first full-time staff person as an assistant principal in January of 2000, as we looked to launch a school in August of that year. So I was assistant principal for 3 years, and then elementary principal for 6 years, high school principal for several years, and then became head of school. And I've been head of school, which we changed the title to president a little bit later, for now 11 years. And so it's been a great journey. Most of it here at Calvary Christian Academy, and a little bit at Coral Springs Christian prior to that. And as far as why do I do it, to me, Christian education is just such natural for fulfilling the Great Commission, where Jesus told us to make disciples, teaching people to obey the things that he's commanded. And so whereas church is so powerful, but tends to only get them a couple hours a week, and for us to be able to have them from 7 to 10 hours a day, depending on sports or other things they might be involved in, is just such a great ministry. And especially in these years when they are so moldable, more likely to make a decision for Christ, it's just a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, amen. We're glad you're there because you're doing great things. And great things are happening at Calvary, both inside and outside of the classrooms and the community. And Christian school is a movement. So that's why I was excited to connect with you today on that front. Well, we share a lot of the same background. As I said in my opening, and then you just said there, we came up through the ranks like a lot of us did through education, sometimes in the classroom, principalship, and things like that. Then you find yourself running a school. Did you have that moment like myself where you said, boy, I am running a multi-million-dollar business here, and I've got to get the business side of this correct? Do you remember that time when you realized that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was probably pretty easy to realize that, or to have that pointed out to you, because I think when I really became a leader, it was still a little bit of a challenging time for Christian education, as I think they said the national amount of enrollment in Christian schools was going down by about 2% a year. And so it seemed like every year here in South Florida, you were hearing about a different Christian school closing. And so that was always a reminder. It's like, hey, I knew those people. They love the Lord. They were really trying to do a good job as a school, but it was the business aspect that made it close. So I knew that's something that we had to get right if we were going to continue ministry and education.
It was the business side that made it close, I think is what you said.
Yeah.
And what I would contend with is not getting that business side correct. And that's what I really said, in the opening. So that's fascinating. Any surprises that you remember from those early days when you really thought about, boy, this is really a business that I'm running here? As much as we've all been trained educators to not think of our schools like businesses. I know I came out of the 80s and 90s, and it was kind of taught to me, hey, you can't think as kids as checks, and you can't think of this is a ministry, this is not a business, and things like that. And I was kind of reared in that school of thought. That sounded good as a teacher and a principal, but that did not play in the head of school, the ranks. And I was just surprised at how powerfully different it was, because like you said, I was faced with that reality that if I don't address the business side, we're not going to make it.
Yeah, really, when you think about it, you're engaging with all types of factors that are not going to budge. For example, there's an electric bill to be paid. There's a mortgage to be paid. There are staff people who are depending on a paycheck, and you've committed that you will pay them this paycheck. So in order to make that non-negotiable part, in order for you to deliver and let your yes be yes and be true to your word, you really have to make the income side work as well. And of course, we want to be flexible and do what we can with financial assistance and help people in different ways and show grace in all the ways that we can. But there is still a bottom line that has to be taken care of if we're just going to be true to our word and pay our bills and pay our teachers and do things like that. It was always funny to me when some people would be offended if you were, demanding that, hey, this tuition has to be paid, And yet I don't think they would ever walk into a restaurant and just eat and walk away without paying, or go into a clothing store and pick up a shirt and walk out. But sometimes they could think, well, since you're a Christian ministry, you wouldn't require this of me. And it's like, well, if I didn't need to be true to my teachers, true to the electric company, those things, I could probably let it go too, but I can't.
Yeah, right. It's not a biblical or even an ethical way of thinking about life. And yet you're right. So many times that happened for decades and decades. Well, I'm glad you brought up, when you kind of jumped in, because Calvary, compared to a lot of Christian schools, not that old, right? It's only 26 years old now. So, like MCS was started in 61 and built a building in 63. So, comparatively, much older. Yet you said when you jumped in, you saw things going the other direction. Declining by about 2% and maybe in the early twos and things like that. And then you soon realize, well, we're going to have to turn this thing around. So now, boy, the largest Christian school system in the country, obviously 26 years, the Lord has really blessed. To what do you attribute? Is it as simple as demographics? Boy, everything changed. Is it school choice in Florida? Was it good business decisions, or was it just all of the above? But how'd you go from there to now? Because you're not just the average Christian school, right? You're a big deal. I'm going to tell you.
No, I appreciate that, and definitely all by the grace of God that He's done what he has here. Oh, and just to be clear too, when I was talking about the 2% decline, it was sort of like nationwide. That's what was happening. Definitely only by the grace of God could it happen, because we can't even tie our shoes in the morning if He doesn't hold us together and make the world and universe and so many things that He's sustaining. But some practical considerations. One, as far as for when we actually opened with 400 students on day one, which is sort of a unique thing to do. And that was really so much on the coattails of our church ministry, is that Calvary Chapel in Fort Lauderdale had just a culture of excellence and a reputation for excellence, to where I remember when I was interviewing families who wanted to come to the school, we really didn't have many answers for them because we hadn't opened yet. It's like, are you going to have aftercare? It's like, probably, but let me look into that for you. What curriculum are we going to use? We're working on that. Everything was unknown. But what parent after parent would say is, well, I know if Calvary Chapel is doing it, that it's going to be excellent. And so we really had the trust of this, church community is what let us launch the way we did. And then, because we had all been trained up in this culture, I think we really did continue a culture of excellence and really hire excellent people, which is the most important thing, is, who are your faculty and staff. And then just try to be making decisions with the kind of facilities we built, the kind of curriculum we chose, to really try to do it with excellence, while also trying to, make it affordable for parents. You're trying to control those three levers, right? It's like, what is tuition? What are you paying your faculty and staff? And what is the quality of your program? So trying to get those in the right sweet spot that people could afford it, but we're going to try to pay people well, and we're going to have an excellent program. And through the years, God has really blessed it, and we're so thankful for that.
That's perfect, and it's spot on. And really, you almost really answered my next question, and you really did a great job of the foreshadowing there, because I was going to be, like I said in my intro, or I was going to ask, as an educational institution, you have to deliver excellence for those customers. And so it sounds like, fortunately, that was part of the DNA of Calvary Chapel. And so, like you said, the customer assumed it would be good. But, assumptions have to be proven. So what kinds of things did you tackle early on that you said, okay, this will be excellent? So, like you said, teachers, probably first and foremost, we have to go out and find great teachers, and we're going to have to pay them, because probably great teachers aren't going to work for half of what they could be making someplace else. So that was one of the strategies you used right out of the gate. But what else did you do to say, we're going to deliver excellence, and they're going to notice it right away?
Yeah. No, good question. I think, one little distinctive that we started out with was we thought that we were going to be strong in the fine arts area. And whereas for a lot of schools, you'll have like an athletic director leading an athletic program, but fine arts can often just be sort of done on the side by a teacher after school. Instead, we were actually going to have a full-time fine arts director, and a department there that was really trying to make that area to be excellent. Later in time, we were able to build, really state-of-the-art theater and just have educational spaces that really spoke excellence. And that's something I really learned from some of the leaders before me, because I think I was thinking more in terms of we need a bunch of cubes to do classrooms in, and they had a greater vision to create just really beautiful, excellent space that went beyond what I would have imagined. But I see now the wisdom in that, because when someone's doing a tour of your school, you only have that one chance to make a first impression. And it's like when the facilities are excellent, it does just give an impression of, wow, these people really do excellence. They're not skimping on my child. So I've seen the wisdom in, excellent faculty and staff, number one, but also, great facilities, and then great programs too. We have, now we've gone up to, just on our main campus, 77 different athletic teams. So all kinds of different sports at different, school levels. Project Lead the Way as a STEM program, which has been real powerful. Robotics, we have dance studios, just more AP classes than any Christian school I know. We have real distinctive overnight trips for everyone in 4th grade through 12th grade, including like 8th grade mission trip to the Bahamas, 11th grade to Mexico. So these things that become traditions that siblings look forward to because their big brother and big sister did these cool overnight trips. So all those kinds of things to try to give the student the very best we can while keeping it affordable and paying teachers well.
Yeah, I love that. Great. Yeah, those are solid. And schools would be wise to start looking at some of those programs, so looking at some of those strategies, because as I tell schools when I do consulting, there's a reason why some of these schools are successful. And yes, content or context matters. I get that. And, South Florida is not the same as, North Central Ohio or, the middle of Kentucky or whatever state you're in. However, there are some best practices that work across states and across context. And some of these schools, like Calvary, are big for a reason. So look at what they're doing and figure out how maybe you can take that and make it work even in your own context. And so, boy, that has certainly worked for me here at MCS. So I hear you on that, and I love what you're doing down there. Well, part 2 then, let's talk about Calvary Christian as a ministry. Like I said there, how does Calvary Christian demonstrate transformational impact in the lives of your students? And that's a big part of who you are. You've got to prove it, right? And our customers, as we know, especially this new generation of parents, I tell people all the time, they like metrics and stories, and they want to see some data, and they also want to hear some great stories about how you're transforming lives. So how do you try to communicate that or demonstrate that at Calvary Christian?
Yeah, I'll say a word first on some of how we try to make it happen. One thing that, just as part of our culture, is that we will often refer to our teachers as teacher ministers. And so, you're not just a teacher, you are a, minister to the students. And we want that to be a huge part of what you're doing. If you're just doing the academics in the way that a secular public or private school would do it, then you're really failing. But instead, we need ministry to be happening as well. Also, one thing that's been a real blessing is for 7th grade and up, every single student is in a small group every week. And so we've got a period of the day baked into the schedule. And this is in addition to Bible class, in addition to chapels, but an actual small group time. Because with Bible class, it's larger and there is some academic going on there as well. With chapel, it's more like 200 in a room at a time. Whereas with a small group, you're talking around 10 to 12 students. And we have them separated into boys and girls, and with a teacher or leader who's also, male or female to match. And with that, everyone, it really keeps anybody from slipping through the cracks, because you're able to have those conversations about how are you doing, and especially how are you doing in your spiritual walk, how are you doing with your friends, with your family. So to be able to have that every single week has just provided so much care and counsel and relationship building, because there's no academic work to be done. This is just a time for us to really go deeper and connect. And so that's been a beautiful thing. As far as demonstrating, one thing that a former head of school brought, which has been a real blessing, is something we call the e-portfolio. And so in 5th grade, so you're finishing elementary, in 8th grade when you're finishing middle school, and in 12th grade when you're finishing high school, each of those, the student actually is going to do a presentation in front of a group. So 5th grade is just in front of their parents and teacher. In 8th grade, we have a few more come in and hear, and 12th grade as well. So it might be, different people who you might want to invite. It might be pastors, friends, family members, and then we'll also assign some people to be there to review it as well. But the student's going to be presenting on, really not on some subject, but on themselves and their walk with God, and what they've learned, how they became a believer, their biblical worldview, people who've impacted their life, and their walk with God. And it's really a singular time that, again, helps kids not just slip through the cracks and go through school and be like, yeah, I never really believed anyway, Though we can have somebody who that happens, but they're going to need to tell us a story about it. And so we have a chance for them to really share that story. And it's generally a moment of parents crying and teachers crying, and just some real heartfelt time there that I'm so glad that former head of school had the vision to bring that to us, and something that we've continued to do, to where you really get to hear. And parents are often like, wow, I learned things about my child that I never knew, because when do you stop and hear from them for 15 minutes straight, on their walk with Christ? So it's that's been a cool and powerful thing too.
That is. Yeah, I love that. Well, it sounds like you certainly, like a lot of schools, you rely on the teachers for sure. They're the ones touching those kids every day. Really that life on life, mentoring and transformation that happens. Did that lead to, let's talk about that Schools United conference. Did that lead to, or that desire lead to the creation of that? Because that has gone from, zero to hero, so to speak. That, nobody was doing that. And, ACSI, if you remember, used to do that back in the 80s and 90s, and they would get 2,000 or 3,000 people. I know that's when I started my career, and we'd go to the Dayton Convention Center, and they'd bring in national speakers. It was a big deal. And then they just, phased out over time because they were just so much work to try to pull off. And it sounds like, Calvary's resurrected the idea, and now you're exceeding those numbers, 4,700. That's incredible. But what was behind the motivation there, and what's the purpose of that conference?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and I'll share a little bit of the genesis of it. So when I became a head of school 11 years ago, I just really enjoyed connecting with other heads of school, because it's like, hey, we're the only people doing this thing on our campus. And so, I can't necessarily talk to the people who report to me real frankly about some stuff, and I don't want to make my wife have to carry it all. So to be able to get together with other heads of school and share the challenges and also learn from each other. Hey, what do you guys do about this problem? How do you handle these problems? So really creating a network for heads of school in our area, which lots of places do, for sure. And I'm so glad they do. And so then we went from some informal gatherings to making something that we called Schools United, and started regularly getting together as heads of school. Then we started inviting some different positions, like maybe our finance director or missions directors and stuff to that. And after a couple of years of that, we said, hey, why don't we do a professional development day together? And so it was like, wow, that'd be great. So we did, and year one, 700 people came. And so that was just like a great thing. We hosted it at our campus because we've got the most space, of the schools in the area. And then now this past year, it was I think probably about year 5 or 6. It was 4,700. And so to see it just grow year over year has been a powerful thing. And really the focus, for us with Schools United was trying to help everybody have a profession-specific peer network. So we wanted not just heads of schools to get together, but we started encouraging our finance directors to get together with each other, our athletic directors to get together with each other, even down to ESE coordinators, admissions counselors, and the conference just sort of really grew out of the head of school one. But it ended up being a great support to that peer network idea, because one of the things we do during the course of the day is we break everybody up according to their profession. And that's one secret to how the conference grew to be so big, is that we encourage the schools, don't just send your administrator and a couple of teachers, shut down for the day and bring everybody. And so, and we mean everybody. So even down to not just even all your teachers, but how about your receptionist, your school nurse, your food service, your security? Bring everybody, and we're going to have something for everybody. And so we have a keynote speaker that often hits everybody well. We have breakout sessions, and we try to hit every profession there. And then we also have a time that's just you're getting together with people who do what you do. And they love that because, wow, I'm with all the food service people of all the schools, who's your vendor for this, or how do you deal with this problem, and admissions people, what do you do for software with this or that? And so it's just been a real unifying thing. Like John 17 talks about Jesus is praying for the believers, and he prays that we would have the unity with each other in the same kind of way that God the Father and God the Son do, which would be obviously perfect unity. So this has really brought Christian schools in the area together, and we are able to serve each other, care for each other, learn from each other. It's been a fun thing. And so then to see other people pick it up and run with it in some other states has been real gratifying too.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And are you servicing mostly just the schools in South Florida? Or are you getting some people from all over the country coming, maybe bringing a smaller group because they're not probably putting 75 teachers on a plane?
Right. Yeah, that's really what makes it work for so many people that are within driving distance. So yeah, I'd say of the 4,700 that 90% of them are within driving distance.
Gotcha.
But then we have people from other states and even from other countries who come to fill up that last 10%, and so that's a cool, gratifying thing as well. But the part that makes it really the secret sauce is, we charge $40 for it, and so which often doesn't even cover the food and the speaker and things like that. Then we have sponsors who help close that gap. So the price is kept so low that you actually can afford to bring your whole staff. Because I know I use the example, me and one other guy went to a conference, and it ended up costing $2,000 for just the two of us to go to a 2-day conference, because it was $500 each for admission, $500 each for the 2 nights of hotel, and then you had the travel. So yeah, over $2,000 for 2 people. Well, for $2,000, you could have 50 people come to Schools United, and you're not paying for, if they're driving, you're not paying for travel, food, rental cars, all that kind of stuff. So it's that's sort of the secret sauce that makes it be able to grow the way it does.
Right. But you're doing things there, obviously, that would appeal to broad groups, not just people in Florida, but obviously people at Christian schools are all around the country. So, yeah. So if they're outside the state, then yeah, they want to look at that as well. Like I said, they may bring less people, but boy, an affordable conference to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. And we have
better get there early to have a seat.
And we have a day before that's just for administrators, and we don't charge anything for that day. So that's been a cool thing too.
Okay, good. Well, we just appreciate you doing that. So if teachers make up the majority of people there, what tracks seem to be the most popular with the teachers? What kinds of things are they saying that they most enjoy hearing?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And most of the sessions fill up, so in some way it can be hard to know what's most popular. But it seems like some of the ones that do fill up more quickly are like classroom instruction oriented topics, or the kind of things that, how to, better engage your students. I think teachers are often just wanting to hone their craft and be better at what they do. So those are some of the ones that do the best. And we have a lot on, differentiated instruction, use of AI, all kinds of things that appeal to people. But ones where teachers can do a better job of what they do is usually the key.
Yeah. The art and science of teaching, right? Pedagogy.
Yep.
Good. Awesome. How about admins? What do they tend to ask you about? The head of schools or the business people or even just the principals? What do they tend to ask you about?
Yeah, often it'll be things like, growing enrollment, advancement, fundraising, also AI, that's just such a fresh, hot topic. And then things like even time management, security, for here in South Florida or here in Florida and some other states that have it. It'll be things on, what about school vouchers and how does that work? And, what are some ways to maximize that? All those kinds of things.
Yeah. So it sounds like, pretty similar to what we're doing all over the country then as well. Those would be what I'm seeing at the ACSI conferences and a lot of other places. So, yep. Like I said, really, we have much more in common from state to state than we do differences. So if you can find best practices, and best people speaking into those practices that are working at successful schools, then man, give them a look, study them, and see how they might fit in your context. So it just, continues to reiterate what I'm preaching where I go. So I'm glad about that. Well, tell us about the decision to operate 4 campuses, because that's unique. Not too many. I mean, that would almost be like having what the public schools would say, you have a school district almost. And so, in many ways you look like that. The public school model might have one central high school, but you've got 2 or 3 middle schools, 2 or 3 elementaries that all feed into that high school, and they all have different names, but they're part of that district model. That's almost you in some senses. Now you may have 4 different high schools. I don't know. But how'd you, from a business angle, how'd you get to that point where you said, okay, rather than just continue to build this massive college campus that we could just have, 3,000 kids on this one campus. No, let's go ahead and move some locations. How'd you get to that point as a board and a leadership team?
Yeah, no, good question. And really, tell you the truth, we weren't seeking it. So it came to us.
That's always great. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So we're here in Fort Lauderdale for the main campus. And then there's a school, Hollywood Christian School, that had been around for like 56 years and had been like up to, I think, 15 or 1,600 students in its heyday. But through the years had gone through some tougher times and had gotten down to about 360 students. And with that, was often, it might be in the black one year, but then in the red 2 years in a row, and then in black, and when you have a school, even of 360 students, that's a multi-million-dollar budget. And so swings in that budget could really just wreck a small church that is leading it. And so the church had gotten to the point where they said, we just can't continue to do this, but we want to see Christian education continue on the campus. And so through all the Schools United, good connections and things, their head of school said, why don't you talk to Jason Rachels over at Calvary? So we set up a meeting, started talking about possibilities, and in the end came to the conclusion of, hey, why don't we have Calvary Christian Academy run the school, and we will take over all the risks associated with that so you don't have to worry about a 6-figure loss, like you've gone through this past year. We'll take on all that risk. And we'll pay rent to the church for the space, but we'll officially run the school. So everybody agreed on that. We officially shut down Hollywood Christian School so as a legal entity, so that was just a clean sweep, and then started Calvary Christian Academy Hollywood. And we were ready for it to be in the red for multiple years as we tried to turn it around. But God really blessed us and made it grow by 20% in year 1, so that we were in the black year 1. And so then we even had dollars to reinvest and, improve facilities, improve staffing, add a clinic, add a nurse, add security, all these different things that just kept taking it higher. So now, 7 years later, it's almost double the size at 710 students. Is what it was last year, and we anticipate it being more for this coming year, but enrollment's still happening. Then 3 years ago, Miami School came to us with the same situation. They had been like 750 in their heyday, and it shrunk down to 140. And so we did the same thing. We took over the school. We paid them rent. They were happy for us to take on the risk. That one we did carry in the red for multiple years, but part of that was because we just were so confident in the way it had gone at our last school that we were okay to make some big investments on the front end of just remodeling space and making things to be a lot better. So really, yeah, so it came seeking us, and it's been some beautiful partnerships with those churches that we love working with them and them speaking at chapels and being a part, and we're glad that we've been able to keep that Christian school footprint going and even grow it. And then the 4th campus, our church has 10 campuses, so we actually used one of those campuses to start a preschool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Incredible. Well, it sounds like, thankfully, like you said, by the Lord's blessings, you were financially able to assume the risk. Because I know there are a lot of schools that dabble in this area, but their own, the budget at headquarters, so to speak, on the main campus, they can't assume the risk that you're exactly right. Other schools might come to them and say, hey, can you take on our liabilities? We're moving in the wrong direction. We need somebody to come in and turn us around. So that's blessing number one. It's doable. You need to have some capital up front to make that work. But then 2, that you were able to say, okay, we're going to move our excellence, the DNA of Calvary's excellence over to your campus, such that the customer saw that and responded, and then they have grown. So I think those 2 pieces are key, that you've got to have the budget availability for it, but then you've got to have a commitment from the homeschool to say, and by the homeschool, I mean, somebody like Calvary, to say, this is not going to be same old, same old. It's going to be excellent, and we're going to pour into that. Is that accurate summation of what you guys did?
Yep. Yeah, no, for sure. We definitely wanted to honor all the good things they were doing, but also bring in our culture and excellence and try to take it further to where enrollment would go the other direction. And thankfully, enrollment has grown on both of those campuses and continues to, which we're so thank God for.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a big fan, and you're just a good example. So I'm going to keep citing that when I talk to other schools. But I'm a big fan of the district model. And I think even though we've got school choice, going around all different states and Ohio, of course, Florida, I mean, it's very, very popular. And I get that. And a lot of really tiny Christian schools who were really struggling before school choice. I mean, school choice it saved their budget. They were underperforming and undercharging in a lot of ways, and they were just barely making it, some with and without church support. School choice stepped in and now gave everybody a voucher, and now all of a sudden, enrollment's booming again, or at least, they're nearing capacity like the good old days. I worry that, eventually they're going to be right back into this same cycle. And I'd rather see them connect with an excellent school that can provide them with lots of resources, and go to a district model, be part of an excellent school district, so that I think you'll get twice as good as you were, twice as fast. Because for those small schools, it's hard for them to get up to speed, because it's going to take a lot more funds and excellence than what they typically realize. And I also advise them, don't forget vouchers and school choice. It's a dual-edged sword, because now the customer has a check and they can choose wherever they want to go. So if you're not performing at that excellent level, well, now I can choose the other Christian school that is, or some other private school or something like that. So just because now they have money to afford your school doesn't mean they're going to stay at your school if they don't perceive that the value's there. So I love that you're doing that, and I'm going to keep preaching that. To do it well, you want to look that direction at Calvary.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it is a neat thing. The way I often think about it is the smaller school is able to punch above its weight because they really have all these fractional executives at their service. So for example, that school of 140, they couldn't have a full-time academic director, a full-time,
That's right.
Highly qualified IT director, finance director, all these positions that we do have. And our guys can lend their time, in a fractional way, but those guys are getting that high quality, higher paid person than they could afford, who's able to say, hey, let's do the IT this way. And hey, how about the academics? We've done the research. This is a great textbook to use, or some great resources. So it's been really cool to see the blessing that comes from that.
Oh, good. I love that. Well, let's finish then with the business side of things, which we talked about, the educational, the ministry, now the business. So outside of tuition, are there any other ways that, and of course donations, which everybody, goes after, any other ways that from a business perspective at CCA, you're trying to bring in other sources of revenue? Because as we said, and I think nobody knows this better than you, you've got to create some margin here, and margin fuels the mission. I've said that on this, show many times. And so we know that we've got to end in the black. We just can't keep running these things, in the red and expect to deliver excellence. So what are some other things that you've put in place there, you and your team, to ensure that you're running in the black every year?
Yeah, no, good question. One thing that I think is something that people could potentially duplicate, and there might be a lot of other people doing it, but that's been good for us, is our summer camp. And of course, a lot of people do summer camp, but something that we changed several years back was we would oftentimes, try to pay an hourly amount that would attract a teacher to want to, lead what might be a robotics camp or a drama camp or something like that. And things were okay. But we actually changed it up, and what we did was this. We actually said, hey, why don't we actually really make this more like a free market, to where the teacher is able to, if they will create something excellent, and if they will promote and recruit people to be a part of their camp, that they actually reap the reward for that. So instead of paying them just like an hourly rate, we said, you know what, we're going to split the profits 50-50 for, whatever it is that you create in the summer. And so that just really, lit people up in a big way to where they said, well, I'm going to make something that's excellent, and I'm going to, share the word with students, encourage them to be a part. And so we have teachers who, literally have, drama camps, robotics camps, remote control car camp, indoor sports camps, to where teachers can literally make thousands of dollars extra, and some of them even in a week, from, the 100 kids that they bring to this great camp. And as a school, we have this greater range of offerings than we've ever had that really just looks excellent and is excellent. And the teachers are loving it because they're actually getting compensated for going the extra mile and making this great. Whereas if it's like, hey, you're just going to get an hourly wage, whether this is a stinky robotics camp or a great robotics camp, you sort of get what you pay for. But if it's like, wow, if I double the amount of people who come, if I make this excellent, it's going to bless me too. So just letting the free market operate there has been a cool thing to bring about some excellence.
Nice. Good. And so you're able to generate some revenue with that, obviously, that helping the budget.
Yeah, it makes it to where, even though teachers are paid better than ever, we're also seeing greater revenue than ever as well, because it's inspiring people who might not have wanted to even be a part to now come out and be a part there.
Yeah.
But yeah, tuition is definitely the big driver. Summer camp does some great things. We have a campus fee that we charge that makes it so that we don't have to nickel and dime parents for things like yearbooks and T-shirts and such like that, that might be for a trip. And also athletics and fine arts. We don't have to pay to be a part of that because you have this one campus fee that everybody pays, and now be in all the sports you want, all the fine arts you want, and so that's been a real help as well. We have a spirit store where we sell, shirts and things like that. And we made a change a few years back, which has been something that we enjoy, and so other schools could consider, is we used to just be, you had to wear the uniform shirt from the uniform company, and all that. But we actually changed it to where if it's, of the certain colors, if it's navy, white, gray, or maybe gold, then you can buy anything from the spirit store that's those colors, that's long sleeve, and you can wear that during the day too. And so they'll have like, Eagle Nation or, Calvary Eagles, whatever it is. And it's really been a fun thing because as you look around the campus, you feel more like you're on a college campus with a bunch of students who are really excited about where they go because they're all wearing the gear and representing,
Right. Brand, right.
But so much of what it is they often like that stuff better than the uniform shirt.
Yeah.
And so they're happier, looks like a cool school spirit, and of course CCA gets the revenue for that instead of the uniform company. So that's nice.
Yeah, that is nice as well. Wow. Yeah. Great thought. Last question then. For new leaders, people getting into this role, perhaps head of school or maybe, at least the CEO level, any advice that you have for them in this sense that, what I've learned when it comes to navigating these three legs or pieces of this stool, when it comes to the educational piece, the school and the ministry and the business. Now that you look back on your career, any advice for new leaders that you can share in this regard?
Yeah. A few things that might come to mind. One is definitely try to surround yourself with some great people. Hire people who are just excellent. Don't be afraid to hire people that are smarter than you and better than you at things, because it's going to so further the ministry. Also, don't be afraid to be tough. Have high standards in who you keep. At your school. I think that one thing that a lot of schools might fail at and that might keep them mediocre is they're too afraid to let people go, and we need to really have a high standard. And it's like, our job is not to be job security for nice Christian staff. Our job is to provide excellence for the kids. And, you might be a wonderful person, but you know what? We've just come to see that it's not working in the classroom. And when you make those tough decisions, you often end up releasing people to find out what they are good at. There have been teachers that we've fired who became great realtors, teachers that we've fired who became great youth pastors, But if we hadn't pushed them out of the nest, they might have never figured it out because the, job security they had here. So be willing to have a high standard and let people go regularly. So, and your A players on your team want to be surrounded by other A players. They don't like working with C and D players, who aren't carrying their weight and doing the excellence to make the school great.
Yeah. Good point. Well, great. Boy, we could go on and on about this. This has been great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time today. If people want to know more about yourself, Calvary, or Schools United, how can they get in touch with you, or at least connect on the website, or where should they go from here?
Yeah, no, good question. I'd be happy to have people connect with me on LinkedIn. So Jason Rachels, you can see me there. And Schools United is schoolsunited.org. Our school is Calvary Christian Academy, Eagles with an S.org. So those are a few ways.
Well, perfect. I'd encourage you to do that, because there's a lot of good things to like there at Calvary, a lot of things to chase down and to follow up. So thank you again for listening today, and thanks again for this interview. Let me make 2 quick chalkboard points for you to consider remembering as we really close our show today. Point number 1 is this: Christian schools are unique hybrid organizations, part school, part ministry, and part business. Leaders here must clearly understand the expectations that come with each of these features. We exist in a competitive educational landscape, and parents have more options than ever before. Delivering academic excellence, proving life transformation, and generating a profit are non-negotiable. Excellence in one area will not compensate for neglect in the others. And chalkboard point number 2 is this: this educational moment doesn't require new conviction, it requires new competence. The schools that thrive will know who they are, effectively communicate why they matter, and will run with excellence and margin. The future will not be kind to unclear organizations, but will reward courageous and competent leaders who are unafraid to show who they are and why they exist. Well, that's our lesson for today, and now you know more. When you know more, you can do more. You can not only think differently, but you can act differently, make a change, live out those convictions, and say no more if you must. Well, thank you again for joining me today on Clearly Christian Podcast. I trust that now you know more about the unique nature of Christian schools and how they effectively serve Christian families as educational institutions, ministries, and businesses. Again, if you like the show today, let us know by following or subscribing. Maybe hit the like button for me. Let others know the show's worth checking out. Certainly makes a difference, and I'd really appreciate that. Remember, the only way we're going to turn things around in our country is to increase the number of people who hold a biblical worldview and live that out. And the greatest hope we have to get there is Christian education. I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this has been Clearly Christian. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. Hear more episodes at clearlychristianeducation.com. If you'd like more information about Christian education in your neighborhood, or if you're interested in education opportunities at Mansfield Christian School, or if you agree with Dr. Smith and want to help him in his mission to influence and awaken Christian America, you can send Dr. Smith an email through the clearlychristianeducation.com website. Message him on the Clearly Christian LinkedIn or Facebook page, or call the Clearly Christian Connection line at 419-756-5651. This has been the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith on clearlychristianeducation.com, brought to you in conjunction with Mansfield Christian School, a Bryan Media production.